Ending the Federal Reserve. There is a growing number of people, and not just people like you and me, gold and silver enthusiasts, but actual politicians who are putting forth the idea of ending the Federal Reserve. We're going to give you examples of what's going on. We'll talk about that, but we'll also talk about the reasons why this is so important to you as an American, as a silver and gold enthusiast, what it means for you on a personal level and a financial level if this does come to pass. And hey, look, there's nothing unpatriotic at all about wanting to see the Federal Reserve ended. Our founding fathers, people like Alexander Hamilton, Benjamin Franklin. Look, I'm not a big history buff, but Thomas Jefferson and a number of others are smiling at the movement that's gaining steam to end the Federal Reserve. But will it work? Let's talk about it right now. The Federal Reserve is the birthplace of the paper, fiat, unicorn fart dust, United States dollar. And we know how it's worked for the dollar since 1971 when President Nixon temporarily took us off the gold standard. Gold and silver are the enemies of the paper fiat dollar. Let's take a look at a chart that will just blow you away that shows how gold in particular has performed against the dollar since 1971. Harvard-educated analyst Lawrence Lepard has this to say about the dollar. He actually has some choice words. I'll let you see that on the screen. But if we zoom into this chart, we see the dollar versus gold since 1970. And as you can see on the right-hand side, that shows the gold price in inverse order. The dollar has just gone down and down and down. I've heard estimates of the dollar losing 99% or 98% of its value against gold since 1971. If the Federal Reserve were to go away, and we're going to look at examples of this growing movement at high levels to talk about ending the Fed. If it were to go away, the price of gold and silver, the value of gold and silver would absolutely skyrocket, because right now there's a big battle going on in the world as a whole between the US dollar and precious metals. But let's just take a look back at the President of the United States who actually signed the legislation to create the United States Federal Reserve. Woodrow Wilson in 1919, a few years after signing the Federal Reserve Act, President Woodrow Wilson said this: "I am a most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country. A great industrial nation is now controlled by its system of credit. We are no longer a government of free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and the vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and duress of a small group of dominant men." I want to ask you a question. What has the Federal Reserve gotten us? I'll show you right now. A skyrocketing U.S. debt level of probably $36 trillion plus by the time you are watching this video. Spiraling out of control interest on our debt, almost $1 trillion. And a U.S. federal budget deficit over $2 trillion. But if you're anything like me, it's also gotten you much more difficult to survive, to put food on the table, to shelter yourself and your family, to even consider doing something fun like going on a vacation. That's what the Federal Reserve got us. And that's why we have a growing chorus, not just people like us, but politicians who are supporting, examining this idea of, is it really in our best interest to have a central bank, to have a Federal Reserve? Thank you to channel sponsor Pimbex. They make these live stream videos possible. Guys, if you want to benefit from getting your hands on some silver, gold, or platinum group metals, and you want to benefit like many of our fellow basement dwellers have by getting the most competitive pricing around, a great selection, and a company you can really trust, Pimbex checks all the boxes. Please support channel sponsor Pimbex. Are you finding it hard to believe this concept that the Federal Reserve could even possibly go away? I can diagnose your problem. It's called recency bias, and I share that problem with you. For almost all of us who've been watching our entire lives, there has been a Federal Reserve. We think it's been around forever because to us, it has been around forever, but it hasn't. It was born in what, 1913? And it can go away in the future as well. Our country did pretty darn well for over 100 years without a United States Federal Reserve. So, who is talking about it? Who is this growing chorus of people that are talking about examining the idea of ending the Fed? Zero Hedge has an article titled "The Revolution Continues. The Ranks of Anti-Fed Republicans Grow." They talk about how Senator Ron Paul, although he's retired now for 12 years, he was the person who spearheaded this movement to eliminate the Fed. What's super interesting, and there he is, right? And there's his book, End the Fed. That was a United States senator, right? What was interesting is this illustration in orange, because it can be seen most obviously with the bill itself. In 2012, Dr. Paul's last term in Congress, his End the Fed bill didn't have a single co-sponsor. It was him and him alone just 12 years ago. Now, fast forward to today, and two very interesting things have happened, because in 2024, introduced by Thomas Massie, the bill now has 23 co-sponsors from the House of Representatives, right? Including people like Biggs, Boebert, Brechen, Cloud, Crane, Hageman, Norman, Tiffany, Mills, and Reschenthaler, and many, many more. 23 co-sponsors in the House. Yet, also, another new precedent was set with Mike Lee being the first senator to introduce the bill into the upper chamber. And let's go take a quick look at him. He's got it on his website. He's the U.S. Senator from Utah. And right here at the very top, right, breaking the bank, Senator Lee introduces a bill to abolish the Federal Reserve. And on top of that, the article goes on to point out that these senators, congressmen and women are using social media, using platforms like X right now to spread the word about ending the Federal Reserve. I mean, what would it hurt? We know that for 99% of Americans, the Federal Reserve has not provided much benefit. Think about 1971. I was born in 1970. What year were you born? Okay, I grew up in a very middle-class family, had a great education, went to a top university, all that great stuff, but very middle class. My family afforded a nice house, a couple cars, nice vacations. My parents were able to afford, although they did sacrifice, but they were able to afford sending me through private schools. And only my dad worked up until the time I was about 12 years old. Think about America now. Can a man with an average middle-class job or a woman be a sole provider for a family and come anywhere close to being able to do that? Absolutely not. Shouldn't things have gotten easier with all this progress that we had? They did get easier, right? And if you're part of the 1%, I'm not. But if you are part of the 1% and you're watching this at your country club, well, congratulations. You've benefited because of the Fed, while the rest of the country, 99 or 99 and a half out of 100 people, are finding life much more difficult. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Remember, in the end, if the Fed loses power, and it's already losing power in the world, we know that, but if it were to dissolve, that would be unbelievably powerful for the precious metals. Gold and silver written into the United States of America Constitution. I want to say thank you to channel sponsor First Mining Gold. They're a Canadian gold development company. They have gold in the ground in Canada. They're in the permitting process for a couple big projects that they have north of the United States border. You can learn more about them at firstmininggold.com. And our friends at Fortuna Mining, they're an operating, producing silver and gold company in Latin America. and they produce large amounts of gold in West Africa. Thanks for being here. It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out in the coming months, quarters, and years. You know one thing for sure. I'll be here with you. We can get together in the basement anytime. Please come back, and I'll see you soon.